So I'm Andy Ellman. I'm the manager of enterprise sales engineering for the East at Fivetran. And I'm going to talk to you today about making information or data as easy and reliable as electricity. So the focus, it seems, for today is mostly on AI and ML. And it's great because these can give you such wonderful competitive advantages. What they all have in common, though, is the need to have data on which to operate. And here are some metrics that I found very interesting, and it comes from, as you see, State of Data Engineering. Less than half of companies think their key data is not yet usable for decision making, but yet they're still trying to make decisions on it. About 2/3 data engineers cannot extract the right amount or the most value from the data. Almost every company has breaks in their data pipelines, getting data into your AI and ML models. And a little bit over half of all the companies have lost market opportunities because of these broken pipelines. So we're going to talk today about how we can make these more reliable and what to be done about it. When I speak to my customers, and folks on my team speak to our customers, some common themes emerge. Our customers want to make better decisions upon current conditions. As data ages, the value of that data starts dropping off. So they want to be able to get the data as quickly as possible into their analytics environments so that they can operate on it right now. Another reason companies are trying to get data into their analytics environments is because it allows them to extend the life of on-prem systems. It allows them to protect existing investments. When you have an old system, legacy system, it might be a little bit fragile. You want to put new reporting mechanisms or do other things on it. You can use data pipelines to get the data into the cloud where you can then extend that investment dollar. Also, we're all trying to do more with less. The staff that's already there doesn't have time to take on much new additional work, so it's got to be simple and easy. And companies want to be able to make better use, make better understanding of their data. And while it's all fine and dandy to have all these goals, we have to live in the realpolitik, and we all have constraints. And these are a lot of the common constraints that we see at our customers. There are a lot of source systems, and they're owned by different customers or different internal users. There's a lot of requests coming in for different sources, different types of data. Companies don't have a good way to bring all of that data together. And when they've tried to do it on-prem in the past, it takes too long, it's too expensive, and the lead times to build up their infrastructure is much too long for getting business value. Okay. So while mixing metaphors a bit, I know on the first slide I was talking about electricity, and here I'm talking about oil. We've all heard this phrase, or many of us have, data is the new oil. Companies require data or information to run effectively or at all now. And in both cases, oil and data, while the raw product that you get is very valuable, refining it increases its value. And the key thing is where the data is found is not always where the data needs to be in order to be used appropriately. So in oil and in data, it's about pipelines, moving the data from where it is found to where it is going to be consumed. And this becomes very challenging when we have data in such a heterogeneous environment. We have information sources on-prem. We have information sources in SaaS. We have API streaming the data to us. We have it all in marketing, finance, products, custom homegrown databases, ERP packages. The data is all over the place, and trying to aggregate this together can be a very challenging process. Also, because we are so far flung, we have such a varied environment in which we are trying to manage our pipelines, from on-prem, multiple clouds, third-party hosted solutions. Governing this data comes critically important. Just like you don't want to leave oil pipelines vulnerable, you don't want to leave your data pipelines vulnerable. So first, visibility. What are we moving? Where does it come from? Who has access to it? That goes into our access controls. Can we automate user provisioning in order to determine who can manage our pipelines and who can share these permissions with others? Finally, the control. We need to be able to classify which of our pipelines are owned by whom. How do we do this? How do we control which users have access to it? And how do we manage PII within our pipelines? Because certain data, say national identifier numbers like an SSN, date of birth, address, pieces of PII may need to be governed or managed differently than the rest of the data that's coming through the pipes. And this gets into how we now secure our pipelines. Again, because we have data coming from multiple different types of sources, you want to be able to protect it in various ways, whether it's through an SSH, VPN, private link. You got to coordinate how you're going to secure the data with whoever is holding your source data, as well as whoever is going to be holding the aggregate target data, as well as the pipeline. So the pipes need to be able to flexibly connect and securely connect to both your sources and your targets. For your PII information, you want to be able to block it, saying, I'm not going to replicate this at all. Or if you are going to replicate it, at least hash it, so it is not going to be accessible to the random people. And also, you don't want the data, whether it's PII or not, hanging around in the pipeline any longer than is necessary. So as the data flows through the pipe and it's written to your targets, you want it to be hard deleted so that that's one less surface area that you have for attack or data leakage. Now, as the data is moving, you want to be able to be aware of who's making changes to my pipelines, see when the data is moving. So you want to have the transparency and auditability, as well as control who has access to the pipelines, and limit or eliminate the ability for people who are managing the pipes to actually see any data that's flowing through it. You just got to make sure that the data is flowing, not want to snoop on what's flowing through the pipelines. And then control the users. Most people on the same team, in general, do not require different access. So you can now manage it role-based at team levels and tie it in to your existing security structures so that you can tie it into your SSO providers, such as AD or any of the other identity providers. In order to do all of this, you want to have a company that knows about the regulations and has gotten the proper certifications. So you can see at the bottom some of the regs, some of the certs that are relevant in this space. And Ron, I don't know the format here, if we take questions only at the end or as we go. So I'm going to pause for a minute and let me know if there are any questions out there, or if we'll just take them at the end. All right, I will assume questions at the end then. You've
Hold on 1 second. Oh,
Yeah,
Andy, sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to mute. One of the things that I always like to stress, you might have heard me in some of the comments I made to the previous speaker, is you've got such great insights. I think you're one of our ideal type of Angelbeat speakers because you can bridge the gap between customer issues and product features within Fivetran. So I always like to, again, be it now or in the future, if you could continually comment on if you're not currently a Fivetran customer and you like what I'm saying and you're using some other tool that does something like what Fivetran does, always include some examples of how easy it is to get Fivetran installed, configured within your environment, even if you're not currently a Fivetran customer. That's something I would ask you to do, that even if people are a little quiet out there in the Angelbeat virtual community, to constantly reinforce that.
Sure. Thank you for that, Ron. I appreciate it. So you can start your trials with Fivetran by just going to fivetran.com, signing up for a free trial. And then as you have questions or you want to expand that usage, you'll work with the account reps and my team, the sales engineering team, to really dig in and define the problems. But you can start replicating your data from Salesforce, Marketo, any of the business critical SaaS solutions or databases that you have within minutes and start setting up those pipelines very easily, very simply, and to start for free. Okay. And are there other questions yet in the queue, or should I keep going?
I think you can keep going. I will tell you this. So, I do this at Angelbeat live events. We're excited to come back. So I always wonder, well, how can I make this happen virtually? So as soon as I'm gonna, it's my event, so I can do what I want. So instead of giving $50 gift card, I'm going to give everyone a $10 card for every question you pose up to the next 10. So 10 questions. You just have to make sure that the question is a good question, and I'll keep track of it. A good question is one where you can ask Andy, how did you come up with the name Fivetran, and what does that mean? A bad question that doesn't qualify is, Ron, how did you come up with Angelbeat? So I can explain at the end. So we're going to see what comes up here. I'll monitor this, Andy, but why don't you keep going? So I'm now changing the rules a little bit, and I want everyone to ask some reasonably detailed questions, and everyone who does it, the next 10 get a $10 gift card up to $100 out of my pocket to help stimulate some interaction. All yours, Andy.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Okay. So we've talked about securing your pipelines, and now we're going to move on to the modern data stack. So you've all probably heard about ETL, extract, transform, and load. That has actually morphed over time into an ELT. You'll also probably hear the term CDC, change data capture. So Fivetran is an expert. We do mostly one thing, and we do it really well. And that's the extract, load, and now some of the transform as well. The reason that you want to move to an ELT is it is more robust. Get the data extracted from your source systems as quickly, simply, and lightweight as possible. Load it into your target. Once that is done, now the load on your source system is done. You no longer have to worry about windows where the extract ran, because we're going to be doing it on a recurring basis without impacting the source systems, and it'll allow your source systems, such as your ERP and other mission critical systems, to do their day job. You get the data into the target, and then you transform it. And you can transform it in multiple different ways based upon what the target environment really needs. If you're running an AI model for sales, might be different than operations. So the source data might be the same, so you can extract it and load it once, and then you can do the transforms 2 different times. The ELT gives you greater flexibility and lower overhead, along with better robustness. Okay? Fivetran has over 200 pre-built connectors for databases, for SaaS applications, and we have a generalized API that you can plug in to the ELT process that'll allow you to get any other data that we do not yet have a pre-built connector for. Also, Fivetran about 4 months ago. Yes.
Andy, before you transition, we have a couple of questions. So that means at least people are out there listening. Could you, because it looks like you're transitioning to what you did, so maybe this is a good stopping point. And we've got some time in the agenda that I'm just checking. Yeah, we're fine. Let me ask you this. Do you have a pipeline? This is from Santos for Log4j text files.
We have one for text files, and we can read into the text files and put it into a structured data source. I don't know if we specifically have one pre-built for that model, but if it's structured, we should be able to tease it apart as we put it into the target database.
We'll get you a follow-up email that I'll be sending to make sure we cover that. Vanny had a question. If you've got approximately 700 users, a pretty good size, medium-sized company, what are some of the costs involved? And I'm assuming, Benny, that Andy can give some rough parameters, but it really depends on the size of the data, how many users. It's really difficult here. Maybe, Andy, you could put some guardrails around it, and then he and his team could follow up with you, Benny, on what specific pricing estimates might be given your requirements in your model. Is that about right, Andy?
It's a very fair question, Ron, and our model is very simple. It's based on something that we call MAR, monthly active rows. So it is strictly about how much data is changing during each month. If you write one record and then update that record 20 times, that's still one record. So during our trials, you will actually, which is free for the first 2 weeks, you'll go in, you'll be able to get your connectors running very quickly. You'll see what data is flowing through, and you'll have a good estimate for what your MAR is going to be. For larger enterprises, you're not going to end up trialing probably every different source that you have, and we'll work with you to help you estimate that. But the more you use, like every other software product in the world, the lower your unit costs become. And our sales team and my team will help you size, estimate it, and cost it.
So I have
it's all based on usage.
Good. I'm going to send up follow-up emails, but we have 2 other questions, and then we've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure you get through the rest of your content as well, Andy. The first is if you could contrast Fivetran to AWS Glue, and I'm sure, Andy, you've got some degree of coopetition with Amazon and AWS. You can comment on that. And the second thing, and that's from George, then James had a question. Okay, I like what you're doing, but if I have a lot of my legacy systems with some existing security, existing protocols, what's the best way as organizations grapple with a complete rip and replace versus a add-on solution? How do you deal with that? James, I can probably answer a little bit for Andy, is that once again, he and his sales team will talk with you. They'll have to look at your specific situation. There's not a one size fits all, but maybe you could talk a little more about dealing with legacy systems, Andy, as I send some emails.
Sure. So I actually find myself running more into AWS DMS rather than Glue. One of the great things, though, about working with Fivetran is we will work across all of your databases as well as your SaaS solutions, and we don't care where any of them are hosted. So it's going to be one company that you're going to work with here that will handle all of your legacy. I'm talking going back to DB2 on mainframe, all the way up to any of your SaaS providers, and we'll be able to provide very lightweight, near real-time access to your data. And for the particular sources that you're interested in, that often changes the advantages that Fivetran will have versus other products. Now, to get to the second question that you asked, Ron, it actually, I think, kind of adds a nice segue into the next slide. We work with customers all the time on legacy systems, whether that's going to be Oracle, SQL Server, DB2Z, DB2I, LUW, whether it's going to be Maria, SAP, do a lot of work on SAP to pull the data out. Each of them have different security models. Each of them are in different data centers. Some are even hosted by third-party providers. We have a set of permission models that we work with, and depending upon where you are, where the data is, what your security requirements and constraints are, we've worked within them. We've worked with healthcare, with government, with finance, banking, insurance. So there's nothing new under the sun here that we probably haven't seen before. And we work, as I said, with VPNs, with SSH, with private link. So we have a flexible connection and protection model. Other follow-up questions on that before I go into describing what we're looking at here?
No, I think we're good. And as I said, I'm just off to the side on another computer trying to make sure that I send these follow-up emails to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great. Appreciate it. So about 4 months ago, Fivetran purchased HVR. HVR specialized in CDC, high volume replication for databases. Fivetran does have some database connectors, but specialize primarily in the SaaS, the events, and the files. So now that we have merged into a single company, we now cover everything from your SaaS applications, your APIs, through your events, to your databases. And we can forward these to any of the major cloud providers, any of the major data warehouses, as well as putting it into Kafka, other event streams, and putting it to files, Azure Blob, in GCP storage, and S3 buckets. So in this way, you can actually move the data into data warehouses as well as analytics platforms. And a lot of our customers actually do both, where you can move the data from, say, a SAP system into both an analytics platform as well as an operational platform, so that you can manage your, I don't think you'd probably want to manage your plant, say, based upon this pipeline, because while it's near real time, that's still probably a little too much lag. But you can manage it for just-in-time inventory, as well as longer-term analytics to feed your AI and ML models. This gives you a single pane of glass in which you can configure your pipelines and manage them and secure them. Sorry about that. And then the final thing that I wanted to leave you with before we got into questions is using Fivetran Where it's a hosted solution, if a data model changes on, say, Salesforce, one customer is going to flag that to us. We will fix that. And then all of the other customers will benefit from that change. So we have the next network externalities to increase the reliability of all of your pipelines. Right now, we have 3 nines, and we're moving towards 4 nines for the uptime. Over 3,500 companies are using us now. And as you see, we are moving a significant number of rows per month to get them into the analytics platforms.